Imagine driving for hours, seeing nothing but empty land, no people, no houses, just miles of silence. Why are entire states across America practically abandoned? You won't believe the reasons. Some states are so cold that even boiling water freezes mid-air. Others are drowning in economic collapse, where jobs vanished overnight. And guess what? Some of these places were once booming but are now ghost towns. You might think wide open spaces sound peaceful, but what if the isolation drives people insane? What if entire towns are disappearing faster than we realize? From bone-chilling winters to extreme poverty, these states have something pushing people away fast. Stay tuned because some of these places may shock you. And if you live in one of them, you might just be one of the last people left. Let's dive into the 10 states that America is abandoning. Number 10. Wyoming. Imagine living in a place where your closest neighbor is miles away. Sounds peaceful, right? But in Wyoming, that isolation comes at a cost. Despite its breathtaking landscapes and wide open spaces, nobody seems to want to live here. Wyoming is officially the least populated state in America, with just over 580,000 residents in a landmass larger than the United Kingdom. But why? The answer is simple: jobs, weather, and remoteness. While Wyoming boasts low taxes and plenty of land, finding work is a challenge. The state relies heavily on coal, oil, and natural gas industries that have seen major declines. When jobs disappear, people follow. The young generation, especially, has no reason to stay, leaving behind an aging population. And then there's the brutal winter. Wyoming's weather is unforgiving, with temperatures dropping below zero and blizzards making travel nearly impossible. Snowstorms can trap entire towns for days, cutting off supplies and forcing people indoors. Even nature, as stunning as it is, poses a threat. Wyoming is home to Yellowstone National Park, which sits on a massive supervolcano. While an eruption isn't expected anytime soon, just knowing it's there keeps some people on edge. Despite all this, Wyoming has charm. If you love solitude, outdoor adventures, and don't mind a little danger, this might be your dream state. But for most, it's simply too empty to call home. Number 9. Vermont. You won't believe which state has been quietly emptying for years. Vermont, known for its scenic beauty, maple syrup, and cozy small towns, should be thriving. So why are people leaving? For starters, Vermont is expensive. The cost of living is among the highest in the country, with high property taxes and limited job opportunities. Unless you work remotely or inherit a business, finding sustainable work here is tough. Then there's the brutal winter. Vermont gets some of the heaviest snowfall in the U.S., and temperatures often plummet below freezing for months. Imagine dealing with endless snowstorms, icy roads, and long, dark winters. It's not for the faint of heart. And here's something surprising. Vermont is also struggling with a shrinking younger population. With few major cities and limited entertainment, younger generations are leaving in search of better opportunities. The result is an aging population and a declining workforce. Despite all this, Vermont remains one of the safest and most picturesque states in America. It's a paradise for those who love small-town life and nature. But for the majority, it's simply too expensive, too cold, and too slow. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this deep dive, a quick like, share, and subscribe helps us keep bringing you more eye-opening content. Now, let's take a look at North Dakota, a state so isolated even its biggest cities feel like small towns. Number 8. North Dakota. Guess which state has more cows than people? That's right, North Dakota. Wide open land, endless skies, and some of the lowest crime rates in the U.S. So why is it practically empty? For starters, the weather is brutal. North Dakota is one of the coldest states in America, with winter temperatures dropping as low as -60 degrees Fahrenheit. Snowstorms can bury entire towns, and the wind chill will freeze your face off in minutes. Then there's the isolation. Even the biggest city, Fargo, has barely over 130,000 people. Outside of a few small towns, you'll find miles of nothing. If you love peace and quiet, it's great, but for most, it's just too lonely. And let's talk jobs. While the oil boom once brought people rushing in, the industry has slowed down, leaving fewer opportunities. Many young people head to bigger states with stronger economies, leaving behind an aging population. Even with low taxes, affordable homes, and friendly communities, North Dakota can't convince people to stay. The freezing temperatures, lack of entertainment, and sheer isolation make it one of the most abandoned states in America. Number 7. South Dakota. You won't believe which state has one of the most famous landmarks but still struggles to keep its people. South Dakota is home to Mount Rushmore, the Black Hills, and stunning prairies, yet it remains one of the most empty states in the country. The reason? Harsh winters, low wages, and a lack of urban appeal. While tourism brings in money, it's mostly seasonal. Outside of a few cities like Sioux Falls and Rapid City, jobs are limited, and wages are low. Then there's the weather, bitterly cold winters and scorching summers. Snowstorms and tornadoes are common, and if you're not used to extreme conditions, living here can feel like a survival challenge. Even though South Dakota has no state income tax and a low cost of living, the lack of excitement drives young people away. Without major cities, big industries, or a bustling nightlife, many find it too quiet and leave for better opportunities. For those who love small-town life and nature, South Dakota is a hidden gem. But for most, it's just another forgotten state. Montana is one of the most breathtaking states in America, yet it remains sparsely populated. Is it too remote, too wild, or just too tough to survive in? Let's take a closer look. Number 6. Montana. Guess which state is so massive that it could fit Virginia, South Carolina, and Pennsylvania inside it but barely has 1 million people? That's Montana. With breathtaking mountains, endless plains, and some of the best national parks in the country, you'd think more people would want to live here. But the reality is, most don't even consider it. For one, Montana is as remote as it gets. If you enjoy peace and quiet, you'll get it, maybe too much of it. Some small towns are so isolated that the nearest hospital, grocery store, or gas station is hours away. And if your car breaks down in the middle of nowhere, good luck finding help. Then there's the brutal weather. Winters here are relentless. We're talking blizzards, sub-zero temperatures, and roads covered in ice for months. Imagine stepping outside and instantly feeling your eyelashes freeze. That's Montana for half the year. Snow can pile up so high that some people have to dig tunnels just to leave their homes. And once the ice melts, spring floods take over. Even summer isn't safe. Wildfires are a major problem, turning the sky orange and filling the air with smoke for weeks. And if that's not enough, grizzly bears aren't just a myth, they roam freely. If you love the idea of stepping outside and possibly running into a 600-pound predator, then Montana might be for you. But let's talk about the job market. Unless you work in ranching, tourism, or have a remote tech job, finding well-paying work is tough. The economy is small, and wages are often lower than in other states. Even basic jobs can be hard to come by, forcing many people to move elsewhere for better opportunities. On top of that, Montana's housing market is weird. In some areas, land is dirt cheap because nobody wants to live there. But in scenic spots near national parks, housing prices skyrocket due to wealthy out-of-state buyers snatching up vacation homes. This leaves many locals struggling to afford housing in their own state. Montana is an adventurer's paradise, a place where nature dominates and people come second. But for most, it's simply too wild, too empty, and too extreme to call home. Number 5. West Virginia. You won't believe which state has lost more of its population than almost any other. West Virginia, once a thriving coal state, has been emptying for decades, and the reasons are hard to ignore. For starters, the job market has collapsed. Coal mining, once the backbone of West Virginia's economy, is a dying industry. Thousands of jobs have vanished, leaving behind struggling towns and abandoned homes. Without strong industries to replace it, many people have no choice but to leave. Then there's the poverty. West Virginia has one of the highest poverty rates in the U.S. The economy never fully recovered after coal's decline, and now many residents live paycheck to paycheck, with few opportunities to move up. And let's talk about the geography. While the mountains are stunning, they also make infrastructure a nightmare. Winding roads, isolated towns, and a lack of modern development make living here feel stuck in the past. Even healthcare is an issue. West Virginia has some of the worst health outcomes in the country, with high rates of obesity, heart disease, and opioid addiction. The opioid crisis hit this state harder than almost anywhere else, leaving entire communities devastated. For those who love small-town charm and mountain views, West Virginia can be a dream. But for most, it's a place they can't leave fast enough. Now, Nebraska has plenty of land, affordable housing, and some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. So why does it feel like nobody actually wants to live there? Let's find out. Number 4. Nebraska. Guess which state is so flat and quiet that its own residents call it the middle of nowhere? That's Nebraska. With wide open fields, small towns, and some of the nicest people in America, it sounds like a great place to live. But the truth is, most people don't even consider it. First off, Nebraska is one of the least exciting states in the country. No mountains, no beaches, and no major attractions. It's miles and miles of cornfields, with only a handful of cities to break up the monotony. For those who love peaceful small-town living, it's great. But for younger generations looking for entertainment and career opportunities, it's a dead end. Then there's the extreme weather: scorching summers, freezing winters, and violent tornadoes. Nebraska is right in the middle of Tornado Alley, meaning storms can rip through at any time, destroying homes and leaving destruction in their wake. Imagine living in a place where a single storm could erase your entire town. That's life in Nebraska. And let's talk about jobs. Outside of farming and agriculture, there aren't many high-paying industries. Sure, Omaha and Lincoln offer some opportunities, but for the rest of the state, it's mostly small businesses and local work, with little room for career growth. Even with affordable homes and low crime rates, Nebraska struggles to keep people. The younger crowd flees to bigger states with more opportunities, leaving behind an aging population. For some, Nebraska is a hidden gem of quiet living and friendly communities. But for most, it's just too empty, too rural, and too uneventful to stay. Number 3. Alaska. You won't believe how many people moved to Alaska only to leave a few years later. The state is breathtaking: majestic mountains, pristine wilderness, and more adventure than anywhere else in the U.S. So why do people keep running away? The first reason is obvious: the brutal cold. Winter in Alaska isn't just cold, it's inhuman. Temperatures can drop to minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and in some parts of the state, the sun disappears for months. Imagine waking up in total darkness at noon. That's a reality for Alaskans. Then there's the isolation. Alaska is huge, but the population is tiny. Many towns are only accessible by plane or boat, and major cities like Anchorage and Fairbanks are still hundreds of miles away from anything. If you need medical help or even basic supplies, good luck. Wildlife is another challenge. Bears roam neighborhoods, moose block highways, and wolves aren't just a myth. Living here means always being on alert, especially if you're outside city limits. And while Alaska offers some high-paying jobs in oil and fishing, the cost of living is through the roof. Groceries, housing, and utilities are all far more expensive than in the lower 48 states. For the brave and adventurous, Alaska is paradise. But for most, it's too cold, too far, and too difficult to call. Kansas is right in the heart of America, yet it feels completely overlooked. Is it just too boring, too rural, or too isolated? Let's find out. Number 2. Kansas. Guess which state is so overlooked that even some Americans forget it's there? That's Kansas. Smack dab in the middle of the country, this state has plenty of land, friendly communities, and a rich farming history. But hardly anyone wants to live there. Why? First off, Kansas is known for one thing: being flat. With no mountains, no oceans, and no major tourist attractions, the state lacks natural features that draw people in. Driving through Kansas, it's miles and miles of open fields, and you might not see a single person for hours. Then there's the brutal weather. Summers are scorching hot, winters can be bone-chillingly cold, and let's not forget it's smack in the middle of Tornado Alley. Kansas experiences some of the most violent tornadoes in the U.S., capable of wiping out entire towns in minutes. And while the cost of living is low, so are the wages. Unless you work in agriculture, job opportunities are scarce. The state's largest industries, farming, manufacturing, and aviation, don't offer many high-paying careers, leading many young people to flee to bigger cities for better prospects. Entertainment is another issue. Kansas has no major professional sports teams, no world-famous landmarks, and very few big cities. Sure, Kansas City is nearby, but technically most of it is in Missouri. For young professionals and families looking for excitement, Kansas doesn't make the cut. With a declining population and few incentives to attract new residents, Kansas remains one of America's most forgettable states. It's peaceful, it's quiet, and it's perfect for some. But for most, it's just too empty, too uneventful, and too isolated. Number 1. Mississippi. You won't believe which state has some of the worst poverty, healthcare, and education in the country. It's Mississippi. Despite its rich history and southern charm, this state struggles to keep its people from leaving. Let's start with the economy. Mississippi has the lowest median household income in the U.S. Jobs here pay little, and there aren't many industries offering high salaries. Many residents live paycheck to paycheck, barely making ends meet. Then there's education. Mississippi consistently ranks at the bottom when it comes to school systems. Underfunded schools, low teacher salaries, and poor student performance make it one of the least desirable places to raise a family. Many young people leave as soon as they graduate, looking for better opportunities elsewhere. And healthcare? It's just as bad. Mississippi has one of the highest rates of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease in the U.S. Access to good hospitals is limited, and many people struggle to afford medical care. Even the weather is harsh. Scorching summers, high humidity, and frequent hurricanes make living here a challenge. And when it rains, flooding can destroy homes and entire communities in a matter of hours. Despite its struggles, Mississippi has a strong culture, deep-rooted traditions, and some of the friendliest people in the country. But for most, the lack of opportunities, poor infrastructure, and difficult living conditions make it a place to leave, not stay. The truth about America's empty states. So there you have it. 10 states in America that people just don't want to live in. Whether it's brutal weather, lack of jobs, low wages, or just plain boredom, these places struggle to hold on to their residents. From the freezing wilderness of Alaska to the poverty-stricken streets of Mississippi, each state has its own reasons why people are packing up and leaving. But does that mean these places are worthless? Not at all. Some people love the quiet, the open spaces, and the slower way of life. But for the majority of Americans looking for better opportunities, excitement, and stability, these states just don't make the cut. What do you think? Would you ever move to one of these states, or do you agree that they're just too empty? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more eye-opening content like this. See you in the next one.